Hello, my name is Chelsea, and I am a student at Texas A&M Commerce. Today I am doing a presentation on the effects of exercise on ICU patients entitled, Does Exercising Within the First 6 Weeks of ICU Admission Accelerate the Healing Process? You might be asking yourself, why exercise? Why ICU patients? Well, for those of you who don't know, the ICU is otherwise known as the intensive care unit. It's a place where people who have been injured, such as in a car accident, or maybe broken an arm, or sometimes people with medical issues or emergencies like a stroke or a heart attack will get sent there. And sometimes these people will stay there for days, weeks, or sometimes years. So, what I'm wanting to know is, will exercise accelerate that healing process and get them back up on their feet? Whether it's a psychological issue or maybe a physiological issue, I'm wanting to take a look and see why. Why exercise? Well, there have been many studies done on this phenomenon, actually. In fact, it's been shown that patients in the hospital, their muscles will break down, and this is called atrophy. Atrophy is when your muscles break down from not using them, or just not using them to their full potential, basically. However, hypertrophy is the opposite, which is where the muscles will break down, but it's to add more material, thus making them stronger, making them larger, and the person with the larger muscles will be able to do more physically. Now, how does atrophy affect the body? Well, if you have severe atrophy, you can't get out of bed, you can't use the bathroom by yourself. So what we really want to do is get you back up to a level of muscle that's either stronger than where you're at now, or even like if you want to go out and join a gym and get ripped, you are free to do that, but we're going to focus on just the normal size today. So, this is a quote from a researcher who has done work in this field. It has been demonstrated that a loss of muscle mass and strength rapidly occur from the first days of bed rest, together with insulin resistance and inflammatory process. Now, these are all a lot of big words that just basically mean your body's going to get messed up. Essentially, inflammatory processes is your body's going haywire, your lymph nodes are messed up, your insulin resistance, your hormones, everything is messed up whenever you're in a hospital, because not just because of the illness or because of the accident, but just because you're not moving around, you're not doing anything, you don't feel excitement, you mostly feel depressed because you're staring at the walls 24/7. And what I want to take a look at today is a study that they have done to see how to help these people and how to get them back on their feet, and if anything, inspire them to make better choices with their health in the future. So, this researcher, I believe their name is pronounced Dennehy, and others that there were several researchers on this study, but this was the initial researcher. What they had these patients do that were in an ICU, basically they took two groups. One was an experimental group, the other is a control group. Now, what the control group does, it's just the baseline. You want to see where somebody would be if they didn't do any exercise at all. You want to see what that would look like, and then compare it to the experimental group, which is the group that they had doing this. Walking to and from the bed, arm and leg strengthening exercises, and even sitting and standing repetitions. That may not sound like a lot to you, but for someone who's been sitting down for several days or weeks, that's actually quite a chore. So, within the study, that when they first started out, they noticed something very interesting about all the patients. Delirium in the ICU and post-ICU cognitive impairment are quite common. Now, what this means is that these patients were, it doesn't literally mean depressed, but they were just in a state of absentness or absent-mindedness. Think of when you go in, you see your grandpa staring at the TV for hours, and then you later find out he was actually asleep. That's a pretty good example. Or say you have someone, a little bit darker, but if you go to see someone in the hospital and they're loaded up with all kinds of drugs, which are depressants usually, pain pills, or a number of things, and they're just kind of staring at the wall. This is the kind of delirium they are talking about. And it is very hard to pull yourself out of that and want to exercise. So what they did was they had these patients exercise, and they found out that exercise, or they concluded in their study, that exercise actually did help these patients. And I myself found this interesting because years ago, my granny told me the same thing. And so when I had a surgery and I was in the hospital for several days, I took off on my own to walk around the kiosk with the nurses in the whole hallway. And I noticed that I felt myself becoming cheerier. Just, I had a desire to exercise more and to get up and to basically continue living. It helps with depression. Or it helped me with depression, which is why I actually wanted to do this study. So for my study, what I wanted to do is take 15 people in each group, preferably. I can go up to 25, but this is kind of involved, so I want to take a few minutes with each person. So the control group, as you know, is the group that's your baseline. We're gonna have them we're just gonna take their vitals 3 times a day. We wanna see how they're doing. We want to check on the same things we would, minus how they feel after exercise, obviously. Now, the experimental group, what I want them doing is very similar to what the other group had them doing, except I want to take in some patients who maybe wouldn't have been included in the other study. I want to do 18 plus, so men or women. I don't care what physical level you're at, whether you worked out every day before you got in the hospital or you've never worked out a day in your life, provided you don't have something like COPD or emphysema, something where you're not going to breathe and that could put you at risk. Now, yes, so excuse me. So what we're gonna do next is the patients that would have trouble walking on a treadmill or walking too far, I want them to start out just by walking 10 feet from their bed and back. I want them to take baby steps, and I want to record vitals 3 times a day as we do this 3 times a day. So that way they kind of get used to their legs again, get everything used to going again. But I also want to take the vitals because, we have to make sure they're okay. But also I want to see if over the course of the 6 weeks, if their heart gets stronger. Now, our mobile patients, they get a little bit more of an arduous task. They're gonna go to the lab and walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes. Now, they can do this at whatever speed they want. However, over the course of the 6 weeks, what we want to see is a little bit of overload. Overload is just the idea that when you're working out, you add a little bit more whenever you reach a plateau or when you get used to doing the same amount. You just add a little bit more and make it a little bit tougher, and you get stronger over a period of time. And I want the vitals recorded as we do this 3 times a day as well. Recording the vitals should not take too long, just 2 to 5 minutes at most, I would think. And then they'll go back to their room after each time. At the end of the 6 weeks, We will take down all of their vitals and we'll look at everything, including the RPE scale. So basically, we're just gonna look at how they felt about what they were doing. Each time they go work out, which is 3 times a day, they're going to tell us whether or not they felt like, oh, this is easy, I can do this. Or if they're like, man, that was kind of tough, but you know, I'm still okay. Or a 20 is basically if you're almost catatonic and you can't really talk and you're just like, think leg day at the gym. So we just want to keep track of their exertion. We want to know and make sure they're not hurting themselves, as well as how hard they're actually working within the study. And then we're going to take all this information, put it together, look at it, and observe the patient both psychologically and physiologically at the end, which is a fancy term for, we're going to look at how they felt about what they did. At the end of the 6 weeks, how do they feel they did in this study? Do they feel like they got better? Do they feel like they can go out and conquer the world and race those kids at the gym? Or do they feel like they're just burnout or humdrum and all of that good stuff? So what this will tell us is kind of where they're at psychologically. However, physiologically, we'll be taking down like the heart, we'll be taking down the VO2 max and the cardiorespiratory information to know how fast their heart was going, how hard their heart was pushing. Were they pushing too hard? Were they verging on a heart attack? Because we need to look at these things for both safety, but also, is their heart getting stronger? So yes, thank you very much for listening to me for a few minutes. And I would like to go ahead and cite the studies that I used for this presentation. I am not going to pretend to pronounce that name. I will mess it up. Apologies to the researcher. And I believe that's Dennehy, but I have no idea. Also, I would like to give thanks and a shout out to Mike Lalika. I probably mispronounced that too, but thank you for the picture of the older gentleman with the cane and the walker. Thank you for listening. I hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye.